My name is Lydia Hartman, 38 years old. If anyone had told me that a simple act of generosity would turn into one of the most humiliating experiences of my life, I would have laughed. But that's exactly what happened on a trip I once believed would bring my family closer. Instead, it revealed just how invisible I could be in the eyes of those I loved. Donald, my husband of 10 years, had always described his family as simple people, loving, kind, but a little stuck in the past. I adored them truly. His parents treated me like a daughter since the day we married, especially his father, who often said I reminded him of the woman he'd fallen in love with 50 years ago. So when he mentioned his dream of visiting Miami one last time, the city where he and his wife had spent their honeymoon, it felt only right to make that dream come true. Money wasn't the issue. I worked hard for my career building my own marketing firm from the ground up. Donald and I didn't have children, which allowed us to live comfortably and travel often. So I insisted on paying for everything: the flights, the beachfront suites, the restaurants, even the private tours. It wasn't about showing off, it was about love. Family meant something to me. When Donald's brother, Eli, 40 years old, asked if he and his wife could join the trip, I didn't hesitate. He'd always struggled financially. His modest job barely covered the needs of their 3 kids, and he often joked about not having been on a real vacation since his honeymoon. I thought, why not share a bit of joy? I didn't know it would cost me more than money. From the moment we landed in Miami, something in Eli shifted. The warm greetings, the laughter in the taxi, the shared excitement, it all disappeared the second we checked into the resort. It began with something small. We had barely unpacked when Eli suggested taking a family photo on the beach. The sky was painted gold by the sunset. The ocean shimmered like liquid glass. I offered to set up my phone on a timer, but Eli stopped me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh no, Lydia," he said lightly. "Why don't you take it for us? Just me. Donald and Mom and Dad. Just family." I laughed awkwardly, assuming it was just a nostalgic thing. Maybe he wanted a picture of their original family unit. It made sense, sort of. But as I stood there holding the phone, capturing the 4 of them framed by the sunset, a strange chill settled over me. It was the first time I'd ever been called not family. That one picture set the tone for the rest of the trip. The next morning, Eli organized a family breakfast without me. He claimed it was just to catch up on old times. At first, I shrugged it off. After all, maybe they needed bonding time. But then it happened again at lunch, then dinner, then the evening stroll along the beach. By the 3rd day, I realized I was no longer part of the vacation I'd paid for. At restaurants, Eli would take charge of reservations, always requesting a table for 4. At the pool, he'd whisper to the hostess, and suddenly there were limited seats. On sightseeing tours, he'd say, "Oh, it's just family this time," always smiling, always polite, always excluding me. Donald noticed, of course. He'd frown or shoot me sympathetic glances, but he never said anything out loud. His mother tried to involve me once. "Come, Lydia, sit next to us in the picture," but Eli interjected quickly. "Mom, we'll take one with her later." That later never came. Each night, I'd return to our suite exhausted, scrolling through Eli's social media posts, where he proudly displayed photos from our trip pictures where I didn't exist. There was Donald, his parents, and Eli grinning ear to ear. Their family trip. No mention of me. Not one. By day 4, I'd become the unpaid photographer, tour planner, and silent ghost, trailing behind the family I thought I belonged to. The strangest part was how Eli's wife, Marissa, behaved. She stayed quiet through it all, offering me polite smiles, but never intervening. I realized then that Eli's controlling nature wasn't new, it was just louder when he had an audience. That evening, after yet another family dinner where I was asked to sit separately because the table only fits 4, I walked alone along the moonlit beach. The air smelled like salt and regret. I thought about my father-in-law's smile, about Donald's parents' laughter when I surprised them with this trip, and then I thought about Eli's smirk when he told the waiter to bring the check to the lady as if to remind everyone who was paying. That night, Donald found me sitting on the balcony. "Lyd, are you okay?" he asked softly. I wanted to say no, that I felt like an outsider in a family I had sacrificed for, that every laugh at dinner without me cut deeper than I could admit, but instead I smiled weakly. Of course, I just needed some air. He didn't push, he never did. Still, as I looked at him, my gentle, peacekeeping husband, I realized he was torn between his wife and his brother. And like most people torn between 2 sides, he chose silence. It was then that something inside me began to harden. I didn't know it yet, but the calm I forced that night would soon become the quiet storm Eli never saw coming. Because if I had learned anything in my years of business, it was this: the person you underestimate is the one you should fear the most. By the fifth morning, I'd learned to stay quiet in the shadows. I told myself that maybe Eli didn't mean harm, that perhaps this was his way of reconnecting with the family he missed while drowning in bills and routine back home. But as the hours unfolded, it became clear this wasn't nostalgia. This was power. At breakfast, I arrived to find 4 empty plates already cleared away. The waiter gestured politely toward a corner table. "Mrs. Hartman, your family said you'd join them later." My family. Those 2 words echoed in my chest like a cruel joke. When I finally found them near the pool, Eli was showing their mother a selfie of the group laughing over pancakes. Donald looked up, startled, his eyes full of guilt. "We thought you were sleeping in," he said quickly. "No," I replied, my voice steady. "I was downstairs. Just invisible, I guess." Eli didn't even flinch. "Don't be dramatic, Lydia. You can join us for the next meal." It wasn't his words that cut me, it was the tone. The patronizing, almost amused smirk. The kind you give a child throwing a tantrum. That afternoon, I tried to salvage the day by joining everyone at the resort pool. The ocean shimmered just beyond the infinity edge, sunlight flickering like diamonds on the surface. I just dipped my toes into the water when Eli's voice broke through the calm. "Hey, Lydia, can you take a picture of us girls?" I turned confused. "Us girls?" He chuckled. "You know Mom, Marissa, and me. The 3 of us. Donald will get one of the guys later." It took me a moment to register what he'd said, "us girls," as if gender could bend to his convenience. His smug grin told me it was deliberate, a taunt wrapped in humor. So I took the photo, then another, and another. For almost an hour, I stood under the sun, framing his perfect family shots, while they posed in every possible combination that didn't include me. By the end, my arms ached from holding the phone, my throat tight, from the laughter I forced, when his mother said, "These are wonderful, Lydia. You're such a great photographer." The irony stung. That evening was supposed to be special, the night I'd spent weeks planning. A sunset dinner reservation at the most exclusive waterfront restaurant in Miami. I had requested a circular table facing the horizon, thinking it would be a beautiful moment for all of us. I wanted memories, not this quiet ache. But when we arrived, Eli slid effortlessly into the seat beside Donald before I could even take off my shawl. The parents took the best spots, of course, and I was left with the chair facing the kitchen door, the one with servers rushing behind me every few seconds. Donald tried to protest. Eli switched with Lydia. She planned this dinner for everyone. Eli scoffed. "Oh, come on. Don't be so clingy, man. It's just seating. We'll swap halfway if it means that much to her." Laughter followed. Mine wasn't among it. The conversation that night was like watching a movie with the sound off, all movement, no meaning. They reminisced about old road trips, inside jokes, high school stories. Whenever I tried to join in, Eli redirected the topic so smoothly it was almost artistic. "Oh, that's right, you wouldn't remember that, Lydia," he'd say, smiling. Each word landed like a quiet slap. Donald's hand brushed mine under the table, a silent apology that only made things worse. Because an apology without action is just guilt dressed as love. By the time dessert arrived, I couldn't taste anything. I stared out at the ocean, its surface glowing orange beneath the fading sun, the view I had reserved but couldn't see. My reflection in the restaurant's glass wall looked foreign, a woman paying for a memory she wasn't part of. The next day was supposed to be the spa retreat. I'd planned it meticulously: private rooms, signature massages, personalized treatments, a day of calm for everyone. But an hour before our appointment, Donald's father said he felt too tired to join. Before I could rearrange things, Eli smirked. "Perfect. We'll make it a boys' day. Lydia." "Why don't you stay back with Dad? He shouldn't be alone." I opened my mouth to argue, but his mother jumped in. "Oh, that's a lovely idea. You two can spend some time together." And that was that. They left, and I stayed behind, watching them disappear into the elevator, the boys' day that I had paid for, arranged, and now wasn't welcome to join. I sat beside my father-in-law on the balcony, trying to hide my disappointment. The ocean breeze carried the faint laughter from below their laughter. He glanced at me, his old eyes knowing more than I could say. "Rough week, huh?" I smiled faintly. "A little." He nodded. "You've been patient, Lydia. Too patient, maybe." That broke me more than I expected. I looked out at the horizon and swallowed hard. I just wanted everyone to be happy. That's all. He took my hand gently. Sometimes people mistake kindness for weakness, but don't let them teach you that lesson the hard way. For the rest of the afternoon, we talked, really talked, about love, pride, and how sometimes the loudest people in the room are the most insecure. It was the first time that week I felt seen. That night, as the waves crashed softly outside our window, Donald tried once again to soothe me. Eli's just being Eli, he said. He's always felt like he has to prove something. Don't take it personally. But I did, deeply, because I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. I turned to him, my voice calm but cold. If this is what family looks like, Donald, maybe I've been loving an illusion. He didn't answer. His silence filled the room like a second heartbeat, steady, deafening, and impossible to ignore. And that's when I decided if my kindness had turned into their permission, then it was time to teach them the difference. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to let reality do the talking, one receipt at a time. I used to believe silence was a sign of peace, that holding your tongue was what strong women did, smile through discomfort, make excuses for other people's cruelty, and call it grace. But that night, as I lay awake, listening to the waves hitting the shore, I realized silence could also be a weapon. Donald was already asleep beside me, his breathing soft and even. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above us and thought about how every act of generosity I'd given this family had turned into a tool for my own humiliation. I had paid for Eli's flights, his room, his endless cocktails, his spa day, and in return, he'd erased me from the very memories I had built. The next morning, I woke before dawn and sat on the balcony, my laptop open. The glow of the screen reflected on my face as I scrolled through social media. There they were again, the smiling faces of the family, perfectly curated by Eli. A family dinner, a family hike, a family spa day. And in every photo, I was the one behind the camera. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on the comment section. Oh, what a beautiful family. Such wonderful memories, you all look so close. Someone even wrote, your sister-in-law must be so lucky to have a husband who values family time. My stomach tightened. For a moment, I thought about replying, typing something sarcastic or bitter. But no, that would give him satisfaction. Instead, I scrolled past the comments and closed the app. The next thing I opened was my notes. And for the first time, I started writing down every single expense from this trip. Not out of spite, out of clarity, room charges, restaurant bills, tour packages, spa sessions, all of it. By the time the sun came up, the total was a small fortune. Donald stirred awake behind me. What are you doing up so early? Just work, I said. He smiled sleepily. You're incredible, you know that, even on vacation. I forced a smile. Yeah, incredible. Later that morning, while we packed for our final day, Donald's father knocked softly on the door. Can I steal Lydia for a walk? He asked. Donald nodded. We walked along the resort path, the ocean breeze ruffling his thin white hair. His voice was gentle but steady. You remind me of my wife when she was your age, strong on the outside, quiet when something hurts. I glanced at him, caught off guard. You noticed. He smiled faintly. I've been watching. Eli's behavior. The way he's treating you. It's not right. I exhaled slowly, my throat tightening. I didn't want to cause trouble. Donald said. He stopped walking. Donald loves his brother, but sometimes love makes people blind to fairness. You don't deserve this. There was no bitterness in his tone, just truth. And somehow that truth freed me. I can't confront him, I said. It would just make me look petty. He nodded. Then don't. Let life confront him for you. His words lingered long after he returned to his room to rest. That afternoon, I found myself wandering through the resort lobby, my mind racing. I thought about every instance I'd smiled through Eli's taunts, every time I'd swallowed pride for the sake of harmony. And then I realized something: harmony only exists when everyone respects the same melody. Donald met me in the lobby later, his usual gentle smile softening the tension in my chest. You okay? He asked. I hesitated, then said quietly, Do you think Eli even realizes how cruel he's been? Donald sighed. He's just insecure. You know how he is. He's always felt like I had more, and you remind him of that. Maybe this trip makes him feel small. I looked at him carefully. So it's my fault for existing comfortably. He winced. That's not what I meant. I know, I said, forcing calm, but it's what it sounds like. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I just don't want drama, Lydia. Dad's health. I cut him off softly. You don't want drama, or you don't want to choose. His silence was my answer. When we returned to our suite that evening, I knew I was done trying to fit into a space that was never mine to begin with. The patience that once felt noble now felt foolish. So I began planning. No confrontation, no shouting match in the lobby, or teary family scene. I wanted something cleaner, something Eli couldn't twist into a sob story later. The idea came to me as I glanced at the hotel's billing notice slid under our door. All remaining charges to be settled upon checkout. I smiled. How poetic. The man who'd erased me from his family vacation was about to find out what it really meant to stand on his own. That night, Donald leaned over and kissed my forehead before bed. "You're quiet lately," he murmured. "Just tired," I whispered. But inside, I was wide awake, more awake than I'd been in years. As he fell asleep, I watched him, this kind-hearted man, torn between peace and truth. I loved him. But I also knew that sometimes love isn't about protecting someone from chaos. It's about letting them see it. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning revelation. When people take your kindness for weakness, the only way to wake them up is to let them feel what your silence has been carrying all along. And when the time came, Eli would feel it, every smug smile, every dismissal, every word that made me small. He would pay, not out of malice, but out of balance. The final morning in Miami was bright and deceptively peaceful. Sunlight spilled across the white linen curtains, painting the room in soft gold. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching waves crash against the shore, that perfect postcard view I had once imagined sharing with family. But now the silence felt heavier than serenity. Donald was packing our suitcases, humming softly under his breath, as if this vacation had been just another pleasant getaway. For him, maybe it was easier that way to pretend nothing had gone wrong, to overlook the small humiliations, the invisible wounds, the smiles that never reached my eyes. When his phone rang, he handed it to me. "Mom wants to know what time we're checking out," he said. I took a slow sip of my coffee and replied, "Tell her I'll handle everything. You take your parents to the airport with the luggage. I'll come later with Eli." He glanced up suspicious. "Lydia, what are you planning?" I smiled faintly, just finishing what I started. Donald hesitated. He had learned long ago that when my voice turned this calm, something was shifting beneath it. Still, he only nodded. "All right, just don't do anything you'll regret." "I won't," I said. "That's the point." When he left with his parents, I finally exhaled. The air in the suite felt lighter without the pretense. I opened my laptop, checked the final billing notice, and walked down to the reception desk. The hotel manager greeted me with a polished smile. "Mrs. Hartman, we hope you enjoyed your stay." "Oh, I did," I said pleasantly. "I just need to settle the accounts. Would it be possible to separate the charges by suite?" "Of course," he replied. "Would you like the breakdown by name or room number?" "By room," I said. "Ours, my in-laws, and my brother-in-law's." He nodded, tapping swiftly on the keyboard. "Certainly. Please wait a moment." While he worked, I let my gaze wander across the marble lobby. Families checking out children, dragging their colorful suitcases, laughter echoing through the hall. That's what I had imagined when I planned this trip: togetherness, warmth, a sense of belonging. Instead, I got performance and pretense. The manager returned, placing 3 neatly printed bills on the counter. "Here you go. Would you like them charged to the same card as the reservation?" "No," I said softly. "I'll pay for mine and my in-laws' room. The last one goes to Eli Miller." He blinked surprised, but nodded professionally. "Understood." I signed the receipts, calm and unhurried, as if this were any other transaction. Then I sat down in the lobby, crossing my legs, waiting. 20 minutes later, Eli appeared. Sunglasses on duffel bag slung over his shoulder, swaggering like a man who believed the world bent in his favor. "Lydia, there you are. I thought you'd left already." I smiled, polite and controlled. "Not yet." The front desk needed one last signature. The manager approached with impeccable timing. "Mr. Miller, if you could please confirm your payment for room charges." Eli frowned. "Payment." "I thought Lydia." The manager handed him the itemized bill before he could finish. "Your suite accumulated quite a few additional expenses: Sir spa treatments, minibar pool service excursions. Here's the total." Eli's confident grin faltered. He stared at the paper, eyes widening as if the numbers were written in fire. This must be a mistake." I tilted my head slightly. "No mistake. You see, I paid for the rooms and airfare up front, but all those extras you enjoyed, those were charged individually." His jaw clenched. "You said you'd cover the trip." "I did," I said evenly. "For the family." The word hung in the air like a blade. He glanced desperately between me and the manager. "You can just put it on her card, right?" The manager looked apologetic. I'm afraid she's already settled her portion, sir. We'll need yours to close the account. Eli's composure cracked. He reached for his wallet, pulling out a credit card with a trembling hand. The swipe machine beeped once, then flashed red. Declined. He tried again. Same result. The sound of rejection echoed louder than any argument could. I sat back, folding my hands neatly in my lap. Looks like your card doesn't recognize family either. His face flushed crimson. You can't be serious, Lydia. After everything. Everything. What I interrupted. After excluding me from every dinner, every photo, every conversation. You made it clear this week that I'm not family Eli, so now I'm just following your rules. His voice dropped to a hiss. You're humiliating me. No, I said softly. You did that to yourself. He stood frozen for a moment, then stepped aside to call his wife. His voice was low at first, pleading, then rising into frustration. I caught fragments of it. No, I didn't know. She's serious. I can't pay this. People in the lobby began to notice. A few glanced over curiously, whispers trailing behind them. I didn't move. I just watched. When he hung up, his face was pale, his pride gone. She's transferring the money, he muttered, defeated. Good, I said. Then we can both move on. He glared at me. You're heartless. I smiled faintly. No, just tired. It took another 20 minutes for the payment to process, his wife's voice echoing faintly over the speaker as she argued with the bank. When the manager finally confirmed the transaction, Eli exhaled shakily like a man coming up for air after nearly drowning. As we walked out toward the waiting taxi, he broke the silence. You really think this makes you the bigger person? No, I said. It just makes me an equal one. He didn't respond. In the car, he sat rigid beside me, eyes fixed on the road. The ride to the airport was quiet, except for the hum of traffic and the faint rhythm of his breathing, uneven and shallow. When we arrived, he grabbed his luggage and stormed ahead without another word. I stayed back to check us in. The attendant smiled politely as I handed over my ticket. Business class, Mrs. Hartman. Yes, I said. A few minutes later, I saw Eli in the long, crowded economy line, sweat beading at his temple, frustration etched across his face. When our eyes met, I didn't gloat. I just offered a small, calm nod. He looked away first. I settled into my seat, the hum of the plane vibrating softly beneath me. Through the window, the clouds stretched like cotton over the endless blue. For the first time all week, I breathed freely. Eli had spent the entire trip reminding me that I wasn't part of the family. So I simply gave him what he wanted, independence. And like most lessons worth learning, it came with a price tag. Airports have a strange way of revealing people's true colors. Maybe it's the exhaustion, the long lines, or the sense that you're leaving something behind. For me, it was where the masks finally came off. When we landed back home, Donald and his parents were waiting near the baggage claim. His mother waved enthusiastically the moment she saw me, her face still glowing from the trip. His father, frail but smiling, gave me a thumbs up from his wheelchair. Eli, however, was silent. His jaw was locked, his shoulders tense, and I could feel the anger radiating off him like heat. Before I could greet my in-laws, he stepped forward, his voice sharp enough to slice the air. She left me stranded at the hotel, he announced loud enough for nearby passengers to turn their heads. Made me pay for everything she promised to cover. It was humiliating. I didn't speak at first. I let his words hang there, feeding on the gasps and confused glances. His wife, Marissa, had tears in her eyes, whether from shame or anger, I couldn't tell. Donald frowned. Eli, calm down. Calm down, Eli snapped. Do you have any idea what she did? She tricked me, after letting me think she was paying for the whole trip. She dumped the bill on me at the last minute. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. Lydia, is that true? I looked at Eli and smiled calm, steady. The same way he had smiled every time he'd excluded me all week. Not exactly, I said. I paid for my family. Eli said I wasn't part of it, so I simply took him at his word. He sputtered. That's not your twisting this. Oh, am I said quietly. Should we check the photos? I pulled out my phone and opened Eli's social media page. The images loaded one by one, his perfect curated version of the trip. Family breakfast, family hike, family dinner. 4 smiling faces. No Lydia. Donald's mother's expression hardened as she scrolled. Eli, she said, her voice trembling. You deliberately excluded her. He rolled his eyes. Oh, for God's sake, it wasn't deliberate. We were just what I interrupted softly. Reliving old memories, pretending I didn't exist. You erased me from a trip I paid for and called it nostalgia. His father's voice broke through the tension, low and firm. Eli, enough. We all turned to him. The exhaustion in his eyes had given way to quiet authority. "I may be old, but I'm not blind," he said. "I saw how you treated her. We all did. Your mother and I told you to include Lydia, and you ignored us. You embarrassed your brother's wife while living off her kindness. That's not nostalgia, that's entitlement." Eli opened his mouth, then closed it again. His eyes darted from face to face, searching for an ally. There were none left. Even Donald, gentle, conflict-avoiding Donald, finally stepped forward. His voice was calm, but edged with steel. "I stayed quiet for too long," he said, "because I thought keeping peace was the same as keeping family together. But you made me realize peace without respect isn't peace at all." Eli scoffed. "Oh, please. You're all just taking her side because she has money." "No," Donald said firmly. "Because she has dignity, something you lost somewhere between your pride and your excuses." A few bystanders nearby were openly watching now, whispering behind their hands. Eli noticed and turned bright red, his anger spilling into desperation. "You've all gone insane," he hissed. "You think this woman's perfect. She's manipulative, calculating. She humiliated me just to feel powerful." That was the breaking point. His mother's voice, sharp and trembling, cut through the noise. "Enough." The single word silenced the terminal. Even the luggage carousel seemed to pause for a moment. She stepped closer to him, her frail frame trembling. "Do you have any idea how ashamed I am right now? You spent an entire week mocking the woman who gave you generosity you didn't deserve. You treated her like a servant, and then blamed her when she stopped serving." Eli looked stunned, as if he'd never been scolded by his mother in public before. "Mom." "No," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "Not this time. Your father and I are tired of watching you twist every situation so you can be the victim. We raised you better than this. If you wanted to feel like part of the family, maybe you should have acted like it." Eli's lips quivered. His bravado cracked, replaced by the faint glimmer of humiliation. "You're all just blinded by her money," he muttered. "She's bought your loyalty." Donald's father looked at him one last time and said quietly, "No, son. She earned our respect. You lost yours." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument could have been. Eli stood there, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his face drained of color. Marissa looked away, her expression unreadable. Finally, Donald's father turned to me. "Let's go home," he said softly. We walked away, leaving Eli standing alone among strangers, a man stripped of his audience, his lies, and his pride. Outside the terminal, the air felt different, lighter, real. As Donald helped his father into the car, his mother turned to me and whispered, "You didn't humiliate him, dear. You just showed him the mirror he's been avoiding for years." I smiled weakly. Mirrors can be cruel. She nodded. Sometimes they're the only things that tell the truth. The drive home was silent, but not uncomfortable. For the first time in days, I felt a quiet sense of justice settle in my chest. Not triumph, just balance. When we reached Donald's parents' house, his father gripped my hand firmly before heading inside. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." I squeezed his hand back. "No, thank you for seeing me." And for the first time that week, I believed I truly was part of the family. Not because of what I'd paid for, but because of what I'd finally stopped tolerating. Eli's shouts still echoed faintly in my memory as we pulled away from the curb, but I didn't look back. He had chosen his version of family. I had chosen self-respect. And that choice finally was mine alone. A week after the airport confrontation, the house felt unnaturally still. Donald and I had fallen back into our usual rhythm work dinners, quiet evenings, but something had shifted between us. Not distance exactly. More like an unspoken understanding that we had crossed a line neither of us could ignore anymore. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window as Donald scrolled through his phone, his face tight with thought. "Mom called," he said quietly. "Eli's in trouble." I didn't look up from my cup of tea. "What kind?" "The kind he created," Donald muttered. "Marissa found out just how much he spent during the trip. Apparently that small balance you left him with was more than their monthly rent." I set my cup down. "So she didn't know." He shook his head. "Not a clue. He told her everything was covered by us. When she got the call from the credit card company, she lost it. There's been a fight every night since." A strange heaviness filled my chest. I wanted to feel satisfaction, vindication, some kind of justice, but instead I just felt tired. "I didn't mean to destroy his marriage, Donald," I said softly. "I only wanted him to understand what it felt like to be treated like I didn't belong." Donald leaned forward, his eyes full of quiet remorse. "You didn't destroy anything, Lyd. You just stopped protecting him from his own consequences." Maybe he was right. Or maybe we both knew that once humiliation starts, it never ends where you expect it to. That night, Donald's mother called me directly. Her voice trembled with a mix of exhaustion and guilt. "Eli's been calling your husband, but I told him not to answer. His wife left for her sister's for a few days. Apparently he's not handling things well." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. She sighed. "Don't be. He needed this. He's always lived in a world where everyone else pays for his mistakes. Maybe now he'll finally learn." "Do you think he will?" I asked. There was a long pause. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I know one thing, you didn't do anything wrong. You were the only one who stood up when everyone else stayed silent. I should have done that sooner." Her voice cracked on the last word. I closed my eyes, picturing her standing in her quiet kitchen, burdened by a mother's love and a lifetime of excuses. "You raised good men," I said gently. "One of them just forgot how to act like it." When I hung up, the house felt unbearably still again. Donald came over, wrapping his arms around me. I leaned into him, letting the weight of the past week settle. For the first time, there was no tension between us, only truth. A few days later, we visited his parents for Sunday lunch. His father looked weaker than before, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his cup. But when he saw me, his face softened. "You look lighter," he said. I smiled faintly. Maybe I finally put something down. Eli didn't come that day. His absence was almost a relief, though the silence he left behind spoke louder than his presence ever had. Donald's mother mentioned he was looking for a second job, now trying to make things right. But the damage to his marriage, to his pride, to his image, was already done. After lunch, I stepped out to the porch. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, the kind of sunset that reminded me of Miami, beautiful and deceptive. Donald joined me quietly, leaning against the railing. "Do you ever feel bad about how it ended?" he asked after a moment. I took a breath. Every day, I admitted. But not because I regret it. I just wish it hadn't been necessary. He nodded. "Dad says Eli keeps telling people you ruined his life." I let out a soft laugh. "No, I just stopped funding it." We stood there in silence, watching the last light fade behind the trees. Somewhere inside, I felt the sting of pity, not for Eli, but for the version of myself that once believed kindness alone could fix people. Kindness without boundaries isn't virtue, it's self-destruction. When we left that evening, Donald's father called out to me from his chair. "Lydia," he said, his voice frail but clear, "you did right by us. Don't ever question that." I smiled, blinking back the sudden warmth in my eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." He nodded, his gaze distant. "Sometimes people like Eli need to lose comfort before they find humility. You gave him that chance, whether he takes it or not. That's up to him." His words stayed with me long after we drove away. In the weeks that followed, the tension within the family began to fade, replaced by a quiet caution. No one mentioned Miami anymore. No one had to. The trip had become a silent marker, the moment where everyone finally saw what I'd been too polite to say. Eli stopped calling. His social media went dark. I didn't ask about him again. Some chapters don't need closure, they just need distance. One evening, I sat alone on our balcony watching city lights shimmer against the night. I thought about everything that had happened. The dinners I wasn't invited to, the laughter. I wasn't part of the photos I didn't appear in, and for the first time, none of it hurt anymore. Because I realized something simple, something liberating. Respect isn't something you earn by giving endlessly. It's something you protect by knowing when to stop. I whispered to the quiet night, more to myself than anyone else. I didn't make him pay for his bill. I just stopped paying the price for his disrespect. And with that, the storm inside me finally went still.